We are live.
All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Shahryar Afshar. I'm president and co-founder of the Iranian-American Democrats of San Diego. We're here today in partnership with our friends in the Bay Area, with the Bay Area Iranian-American Democrats. We're very excited to have you here. This is really the last stretch. I know a lot of you are probably exhausted, and we have basically election fatigue. Every email, every item that comes in the mail, piles and piles of election paraphernalia, signs in the yard. But this is the great American process, and we're really excited to be a part of it. We're excited to contribute to it. And of course, much more, we're very interested and excited to get your participation and contributions to this process. We're almost there, just a few more days, and the election, I hope, will be over and a decisive winner decided in the national election. But of course, so much is at stake at the state and local levels that will have lasting impacts in our communities' lives, not only obviously in San Diego and Bay Area and California, but nationwide. And we're also honored to have guests from all over the country here with us and community members watching on YouTube Live. If you are watching this, you've already visited the Bay Area Democrats website, BAIAD.org. There's also some useful information under that website that I refer you to, links that we're going to have up, either already up or soon later today, including a video that the Iranian-American community came together and produced that includes over a dozen prominent Iranian-Americans, Maz Jobrani, Reza Aslan, and even yours truly. So it's really a nationwide effort by the Iranian-American community to support Biden and Harris, but also to get community participation at every level. So I hope you'll get a chance to watch the video. Will be available on the link soon. But today we have a great lineup of speakers, and my partner in crime and colleague, Ms. Maryam Ghazvini, the president and founder, co-founder of the Iranian-American Bay Area Iranian-American Democrats, will also take over soon. But I'll be your MC, and I'll be introducing each of the speakers as we move through. And if you have questions, I welcome your questions. You can email Sina at BAIAD.org, and he will get me your questions. I think with that, I want to turn it over to my partner, Maryam Ghazvini, to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you so much, Shahryar Khan, and welcome everyone. We are really excited that you decided to spend your afternoon with us. As Shahryar Khan mentioned, this is the last stretch, and we are also excited that Mr. Mobasheri has joined us with the Iranian-Americans for Biden. So please get out and vote. Don't listen to the statistics coming out and saying we are ahead, we don't have to vote. So please get that out of your mind. A little bit about Bay Area Iranian-American Democrats. We are a grassroots organization that formed in 2004. And so for 16 years, we have been very active in helping different candidates to run for their offices and hoping that Iranians will be active and get into positions of policy and power so we can actually have a voice. So we also have passed a few resolutions, which is really important, and it takes a lot of time and effort to be able to bring the resolution to the floor, have everyone vote for it who are not all Iranians, but we make it in a way so that they care, they see our cause, they see the actual issue that we are asking them to help us. And we've been able to pass a few of those, and I will give you a little bit of information on a couple of those. But the main thing is, as Shahryar Khan mentioned, we are hoping that by coming here, by participating, you show your engagement, your civil duty to help everyone in the community. We are a big group, but we have no voice. And this is partly because of some of the experiences that maybe older generation like me have had, or maybe we just don't think politics makes any difference, but it's not true. Your vote matters, every vote counts. And if you have any doubts on that, please get rid of those doubts and keep voting. People who are active, they will be heard. Here are some of the resolutions we passed in the past few years. And we are hoping again, by being active, having a voice, they can hear us. We passed a resolution in 2020 about the opposition to military action against Iran. And these resolutions, by the way, have passed with overwhelming numbers. Another resolution we passed was in 2017. This was the Muslim ban, that we were against that. And then we also passed a immigration statement resolution with our Democratic club in the county, but it was also forwarded, all these resolutions were forwarded towards the California Democratic Party. And again, as I said, they have a resolution committee, they look at all these resolutions, some of them will not make it there, but ours did. So I want you to understand that as a grassroots organization, very few people in our group. We are not a huge group. We hope we will be after you hear us and join us and continue our efforts in making Iranian-American voices heard. If you have any questions, any comments, I'll be more than happy to answer. If you put it in the email, I guess Sina will take those emails and let us know. We will get back to you if I cannot answer it today. With that, I would like to introduce Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, who is a congressperson from our area in District 18. We have been in touch with her. She has supported some of our resolutions or our causes, has written letters to Congress, to Secretary of State, and so on. So with that, please listen to Anna Eshoo. And again, if you like, you can contact her for anything, any comments you might have. Thank you so much.
Oh, we don't hear the sound. Huh?
Yeah, I think you have to go back, maybe. We cannot hear, Sina.
Can you hear now?
No, there's a box in the setting that you need to click for the video sound to come to the screen. Yeah, you need to go to your setup. I've just done this so many times that I know what happens.
When you share the screen on the bottom left-hand corner, there should be a box.
Will has done
Okay,
it many times. You know how to do this.
Yes. So please let's go forward, and we will put the Representative Anna Eshoo's video at the end.
Sina, do you want me to go to Will and we'll come back to Anna later?
Yes, please.
All right. Okay.
Yes, please.
Well, good. Just saw Will Rodriguez, our esteemed chair of the San Diego County Democratic Party, has joined us. We wanted to make sure San Diego made a good contribution to this largest statewide conversation. So we asked Will to come and talk to us about a lot of issues that we're hearing that is of great concern to all of us, which is voter suppression, the logistics of voting. If there is an issue, who do we call? There's just so much that, frankly, personally, I've never had to worry about in voting that have now been cast, doubt has been cast into the voting process. So we wanted to ask Will to explain how this works and what we should look out for over the next few days. So Will Rodriguez, take it away.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen real quick. Oh, could you allow me to share?
We'll do that in a minute.
While we're waiting for that, hello everybody. My name is Will Rodriguez Kennedy. As was stated, I'm the chair of the San Diego County Democratic Party. I'm also the president of the California Young Democrats and a member of the Democratic National Committee. So I wear many hats, but that allows me to sort of have a pretty well-rounded understanding of what we're doing, both as a local party, but as a state party and a national party, in order to not only make sure that we educate our voters, that we register our voters, and that we protect the access to the ballot box. So I have a bunch of things. Here we go. Looks like I can share now. I don't need sound. Okay, I'm gonna put it in present. Okay, so I'll give a little bit of an overview here. We'll talk a little bit about the local stuff for those of you who are following in San Diego, but then we'll go into voter registration, where there's a mix of national, state, and local information. We'll talk about voter registration, voter education, voter protection. We'll go over like how we're doing in California, and then we'll wrap up real quick. So I'm pretty quick speaker, so but I'll give this presentation to the team here so that if anybody wants to see this information, they can. So local a general election, for those of you who are in San Diego, we have 700 volunteers right now in the streets talking to voters. We have actually, this is increased. This is incorrect now. We have over 250,000 ballots that are in. I believe we're at 290,000. We're just shy of about 13% of those ballot count. Our numbers have actually jumped. We are at 52%, which means that the Democratic Party has a 2-to-1 voter advantage over Republicans throughout the county. Now, this is actually behind California, where it's a 57%, but it's also it's ahead of our ballot line. We represent about 40% of voters, and we are, in terms of the Democratic Party, are turning in our ballots by about 12 points ahead of our registration. In terms of looking at voter registration, our party, the Democratic Party, believes that we are stronger when everyone votes. So we don't do the whole voter suppression thing because the Democratic Party is popular in California. There's no reason to do that. So we push voting as much as possible. That's why we passed laws such as Motor Voter, which expanded the voter rolls to people who register through the DMV automatically. This led to a huge increase of no party preference voters. But if you look at how it worked over the last 2 years, I took over in January of 2019. At the end of January, there were 1.787 million voters. There are now a little bit over 1.9 million voters, and we've increased about just shy of 114,000 voters. The Democratic Party started at 639,000 voters before I took over. We are now at 765,000 voters, and we've increased just shy of 126,000. The Republican Party and all parties, especially since we're in a two-party system, has a natural sort of ambient growth in the party, and that it has increased by about 38,000. And then the no party preference has decreased by just shy of 68,000. What this means, if you're looking at this in terms of if you're trying to prognosticate what's going to happen, what's happening in San Diego County, but also what could happen at the ballot box, is that the Democratic Party is growing at faster than the amount of voters that are registering, which means that a large group of those new voters are registering as Democrats. And it also means that once people have gotten into the voting process after they've been thrown onto the voter rolls and they became no party preference or declined states, quote unquote, independents, they decided to change parties and become Democrats. And so what we're seeing is a growth of about 4-to-1 over our Republican counterparts on the other side, which shows that here in San Diego, which is not known as a blue, or hasn't been historically a blue county, is growing significantly more so. Because of the blueness of San Diego and now Orange County, the Republican Party is sort of a third party in California. Local party voter registration, the San Diego County Democratic Party represents 40% of the vote, 40.24. We've grown about 14.29% over the last cycle. This also shows sort of a counter narrative towards the national tendency. The national tendency, no party preference, is the fastest growing bloc here in California and here in San Diego, which was once a conservative bastion, the fastest growing party is the Democratic Party. In 15 of the 18 cities here in San Diego, the San Diego County Democratic Party is the plurality party. There are a few exceptions, Coronado, Poway, and Santee, where Republicans have small majorities. In 5 cities, the Republican parties are third place behind no party preference: Chula Vista, Imperial Beach, Lemon Grove, National City, and here where I am in San Diego. In 4 of the 5 county board of supervisors districts, San Diego, the Democratic Party has pluralities. Districts 1, 3, 4, and 5. This is a huge deal because well, first of all, the county board of supervisors is represented 4 Republicans to 1 Democrat. And it also shows that even in that there is only 1 solidly Republican district, and that means that in the next couple cycles we will likely see a complete reversal and possibly a change of majority here in the next cycle with District 3 and District 1 will be a pickup, and District 3 is hotly contested. So we have 160 locally. This is the last of the local slides. We have 160 endorsed candidates. We have a SANDAG strategy. SANDAG is the San Diego Association of Governments. Our goal is strategic. So to take through the 3 bodies in which provide the most, have the largest budgets, and because the way government works is in order to enact your policy, to enact your the things that you want from government, you have to have a majority, governing majorities on the bodies that have the most resources. Here in San Diego, that's the San Diego Association of Governments, the San Diego County Board of Supervisors, and the City of San Diego. They represent an $11 million budget at SANDAG, a $4 or $5 billion budget in the County Board of Supervisors, and a $3 billion budget here in San Diego. We have the largest mail program ever. I believe I have I think close to 30-to-1 spending advantage over our Republican counterparts in non-local funding, and we have a paid phone and text program. We're doing hundreds, as I told you, of people who are at the doors, lit dropping as we speak, and we have a huge digital investment. Our party is in fact the San Diego County Democratic Party in terms of spending and effectiveness is larger than the Los Angeles County Democratic Party, where they have a population that is 3 times larger. So pretty good down here. Key seats for those of you who are in San Diego, obviously the County Board of Supervisors, District 1 and 3. District 3 with Tara Lawson-Remer against Trump Republican Kristen Gaspar we would get the majority with that. And District 1 is a Dem-on-Dem race, but a Dem-on-Dem race which will determine whether or not we have a progressive and a strong Democratic majority, or whether or not we elect a moderate to that district, which is one of the most progressive in the city. The San Diego mayor's race, Todd Gloria between Barbara Breet, another Dem-on-Dem race where you really have a clash between the haves and the have-not, sort of a person who's more in line with the party with Todd Gloria, and Barbara Breet who's sort of moving towards the center. We have San Marcos City Council, where we're trying to flip in order to flip the majority on SANDAG. Also the La Mesa City Council, San Diego City Council's District 5 and 7, where we're going to expand our majorities, and then Assembly District 77, which should be a win. But because he was a Republican last cycle and the UT endorsed his opponent, you never know. All right, so national voter registration. So first, I want to tell you about a website that is sort of a one-stop shop for voter registration and voter information, specifically on the logistics of voting. That's called iwillvote.com. Done by the Democratic National Committee. It is a very simple tool. It's very easy to remember. iwillvote.com. Here, it is nationwide. So if you do this in California, it will go to California. If you do this in Alabama, it will go to Alabama. It has the ability. If you can see, you'll still see the screen, correct? Yep, cool. You should be able to see, if you go to iwillvote.com, on the right-hand side, it will see if you could check if you're registered to vote. It can show you how to register to vote by mail, or to register to vote by mail, or vote in person. And then it gives you some information about voting in your state. So for example, it'll give, here in California, it'll give you important dates and deadlines for voting, how to register to vote. Do you need ID? Certain states have different ID requirements. That is all here at iwillvote.com. It is produced by the Democratic National Committee. So for those of you who may be joining us from out of state, this is where you go if you want to know if you're registered to vote, the deadlines to register to vote, whether or not voter ID is allowed, your vote by mail deadlines, whether or not you have same-day voter registration, those types of things. All of that information is all here at iwillvote.com, that is produced by the Democratic National Committee. Now, locally, we do have some pretty good tools, but if you want, if either in the state of California, you can go to registertovote.ca.gov. There you can check your registration or register to vote. Now, it's important to note that the deadline for registration, for voter registration is tomorrow, October 19th. But we have same-day voter registration here in California. So even if you miss the deadline, if someone is eligible to vote, they can go to the polls, register to vote, and cast what we call a conditional ballot. Now that means that it will take some time for them to verify, whether or not they're eligible to vote, like they would do for your normal registration. However, your vote will be counted because here in California, we have extended the deadline for certification of the election. So a conditional vote is just as good as any other ballot at all. So if someone misses the deadline on October 19th, I know when I first voted, I got out of the military and I missed the deadline by one day and I turned in my ballot on the day, or my registration on the day, but they postmarked it the next day. And so I was not allowed to vote in that election. So disenfranchisement, whatever. We've made it easier. So even if that were today, and I missed the deadline by one day, I go to the voter register, my local polling place, expecting to vote. If I'm not on the ballot and I live in that precinct, I can register to vote that day. You can also go to the registrar of voters to make sure you're registered as well. So for the San Diego County San Diego County voters generally, you can go to the registrar of voters at sdvote.com. Next, voter education. So for those of you who are wanting to know, you may know about your congressman, you may know about or woman, you may know about your senator, you may know about your state senator, but you may not know about water boards or fire districts or city councils, depending on what city you're in. The reality is that while the city races and those special districts, school boards and whatnot, are not as sexy as the national races, they are actually far more important to your day-to-day life. So, I did when I was in poli-sci, I did a little test, even among the poli-sci students, and identified, I would put up all the electeds, and obviously they could identify the president, the vice president, etc., but they couldn't identify their district attorney. Well, that's crazy because the district attorney is one of the most powerful people in your lives. And the fact that nobody knows who they are, that's a problem. So the same thing with water boards, where they can set your water rates and really hit your bottom line, or fire districts, which is a really important thing for safety, or your school boards, which determine the curriculum for what your children learn in school. These are all important races, and while you may not have done you may not have the time to do the diligence, the reality is we as Democrats, or those of us who are Democrats, I presume most of you are, we have elected people to actually do that for us. They're called central committees. So for example, I was elected to represent the 78th Assembly District on the central committee by the voters during the Democratic primary. And now I'm the elected chair of that central committee. So we believe in representative democracy, and these central committees elect choose our candidates. For the local candidates, I can take you to it real quick, stdemocrats.org/vote, and you'll get to this PDF, which is our voter guide. It has all the candidates, well, most of the candidates. Sometimes we didn't get involved in those races. You're gonna have to do your own research there, but I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But it has the federal, state, judicial. For example, we elect judges. They are very important. Definitely vote on the judge. In this case, it's Tim Nader. All the way down to school boards and special districts. We did most of the ballot measures. Here, the ones that you don't have here, like Proposition 24, nobody seems to be to know which way they're going on that. Some of the local measures, which we could not come to a decision on, but here is basically all the information, most of the information you would need to make informed decisions, at least to determine who is supported by the Democratic Party. Same thing if you're statewide. The California Democratic Party has collected the endorsements of all the county Democratic parties. So what you do is you go to cadem.org/vote/endorsements, and it'll take you to the top of the ticket, obviously, and then it'll allow you to put in your address, and that address will take you to your slate. So you look it up. Oops. Please enter a street, a value for street number. Okay, I did this wrong. Look up. I guess I have to start with street number first. I see. So so you don't want to use your autofill, but it has an autofill here too. And so if you put your street number, it'll pull it up, and then it'll take you to your local ballot, I presume. But it doesn't seem to be working, which means I have to talk to the CDP. Oh, no. Ah, okay, so let's not do that. So for those of you who are doing San Diego, go to sddemocrats.org/vote. I'm going to have a very angry call with the California Democratic Party on why that did not work. So now let's say you have, and you don't have, the party hasn't given you information, or you want to do more research. If you're in San Diego, we have a really cool tool called the ballot book. And so the ballot book, what they do, if you want to quote unquote follow the money on campaigns, is they allow, now there's a free version of this, but I bought the subscription because I want to see everything. Oops, oh, and I forgot my password. What the hell? I forgot my passport. 1 minute. Oh God, this is so dumb. Okay, well, I can't figure it out right now, but basically it's a way for it has like a really clean way to like look at the financing behind the local candidates. This is mostly for San Diego County, but it's really clean, and it allows you to see like how much they raise, how much they have cash on hand, their biggest donors, what IEs are doing. If you don't want to do that, that's okay. For county candidates, you can go to the county Reddit website where they have like all the, it's just a little bit more complicated to look into the finances. For the state candidates, you can go to FPPC, Fair Political Practices Commission. I think it's fppc.ca.gov. For federal candidates, you can go to fec.gov. For local candidates, and for example, in the city of San Diego's city clerk has financial documents there. I always tend to follow the money. It tells you the strength of the campaigns or whether or not they're fools and they're just doing this, and it's like a veneer. You can tell when a campaign is a real campaign, depending on how much they raise and how and who they're raising it from. Another nonpartisan source is Voters Edge. This is mostly for California. Voters Edge sort of collects a lot of like sort of non-biased, nonpartisan information and allows you to go there. As a Democrat, I prefer to go to the Democratic Party first. But if there are races that that haven't been given an endorsement by the Democratic Party, my second stop is to Voters Edge to find out some more information. Another nonpartisan group is the League of Women Voters. They have a national link, vote411.org. They basically do the same thing as Voter Edge, and I think they may have started Voter Edge. I have to look back into that, but yeah. So it's sort of linked, but Voters Edge is their California-facing one. The League of Women Voters, you know, sometimes they issue endorsements against the party, but in general, they're a pretty solid group to get nonpartisan information from. All right, voter protection. So for those of you who are watching the news, one of the things you might have read, especially in Orange County and Los Angeles, is that the Republican Party did something called where they basically created these official ballot boxes and then they dropped them off in targeted seats where they were not lawful. And they were basically saying, hey, turn in your ballot here. Well, that's against the law. And if you see something like that, if you see people who are intimidating voters, like the Proud Boys showing up at the polls, or if you see a vote, so for example, one thing I had to call voter protection hotline for is campaigns will go to the polls on the day of, and before they do their canvass, they have the precinct leaders are supposed to strike the rolls, and what that means is that as people are voted, they strike them off the roll. So a campaign comes up and they say, hey, they want to see your voter roll, and they're like, oh, well, this person's already voted, so I don't have to go to their house, right? Well, they are required by law to update that voter roll. And I had a precinct leader who did not want to update it and didn't feel like she owed us any answers. So I called the local voter protection hotline. We had an attorney on there. That attorney called the county, and within about 10 minutes, fixed. I got my voter roll. Well, it was probably about 20 minutes. About 20 minutes, it was fixed, and I got the voter roll updated, and I was able to do it, and then go on my way and do what I had to do to win. We won that election, so that was a good thing. Now, we have to remember that the large part of this is volunteers. So first of all, don't get angry with the volunteers. Don't get upset with them. Just call a voter protection hotline, get an attorney to take care of it, because it really doesn't do anyone any good to like get angry with someone at the polls. It's largely volunteer. I mean, they get a stipend for the day, but it's largely a volunteer effort. They're doing their effort. They're doing their service for the community and the country. So for the statewide volunteer voter protection team that's provided by the California Democratic Party, the voter hotline is 877-321-VOTE. 877-321-VOTE, and I'll give the slides to the team afterwards. So if you have trouble while you're voting, for example, they say something funky, they require you to show ID, which they're not supposed to in this state, or if you want to there are other violations of the election code. One thing that happens commonly is if they are campaigning within the 100 feet. You're not supposed to campaign within 100 feet of a polling location. For example, just the other day in Santee, there was a polling location at like a shopping center, and within the 100 feet in like a cafe, there were electoral signs or whatever. Well, it was all for the Republicans, obviously, it's Santee, and our Democratic voters called the registrar of voters and confirmed that it was against the law. Oh no, they called the voter protection team, and an attorney called the registrar of voters. They confirmed that was illegal, and suddenly the signs came down because it is unlawful to campaign, to have campaign like materials within 100 feet of an election site. So that's the type of thing that you want to go to a voter protection hotline, and that addresses voter intimidation, voter suppression, anything. If you see something that is done and you know it to be wrong, call this line. They will talk you through it. Sometimes it can be resolved, like maybe it wasn't wrong, it's just a misunderstanding of the law. We have 1,000 volunteers. They have a law firm, one of the best political law firms on retainer, and then they have like hundreds of attorneys who have volunteered for this. It starts on October 20th, so in 2 days. Because there are some polling sites that are opening earlier, and an attorney will volunteer their time and come to the registrar of voter and start threatening suits if it's necessary to make sure that all people are able to vote. So that's the voter protection team, 877-321-VOTE, 8683. Ballot return. So this is a cool little tool that you can track if you're interested in figuring out how the ballot is returning and how it's looking throughout the state. There is a company called PDI. PDI provides voter data for most of the state of California's Democratic Party. The other vendor, which we use in California, is Vote Builder. I prefer Vote Builder. Some people say PDI is better. I don't believe it. It's like an Apple Mac thing. Apple is Mac. Apple PC thing. Apple Mac PC thing, or an Apple Android thing. So there's like sort of a little bit of thing, but I do use both systems. So here is PDI, and what it'll take it. I'll go. It's politicaldata.com/2020 -ballot -return -tracker-date. Again, I will give you the slides so you don't have to worry about that. But it takes you to this cool little tool, right? And you can cut up the data a little bit. So this is for the state of California. There are over 3 million people in the state of California who have already voted. That is a huge amount of ballots. Of those ballots, 57% are Democratic ballots. That is a huge number. If you look at the Republicans, they are behind no party preference voters, which is what I said earlier. The Republican Party statewide is basically a third party. I think they're 12% of their overall voters have voted, where 17% of ours have. So it tells you everything from the age group to the ethnic breakdown. Now, as we know, as people of color, this ethnic breakdown thing is sort of loose. Obviously, it can't identify Black voters. Obviously, it can't break down among Asian subgroups. So this is like the high level, like Asian, obviously that could be a lot of people, completely different people. Same thing with the Black community, which is not even, it's sort of represented here. It says AFM at the bottom. I'm Afro-Latino. So what do you identify me? Am I Latino? Am I Black? I don't know. And they don't know either. So that is a little bit less easy. Now you can, over here, when you select for filters, you can actually make it, you can either break it down by congressional district or county. So for example, it's a little slow so we'll do one of these, but I'll take you real quick and we'll look at San Diego. If it works with me, and it looks like it is. Looks like it is. Okay, San Diego County. All right, and it's loading real quick. So while we're waiting for that, let me see what's next in line. Okay, so we can. There we go. San Diego County. So right here in San Diego County, 19% of the vote has been turned in. That is ahead of the state of California, I believe. We have 357,000 ballots have been turned in. And of this, 51% of them are Democrats. That means Democrats will win in most of our elections. And if you look at the way that the ballot is returning, you know, there are some red pockets out towards the east county and a little bit towards the north. But look at this coastal area right here. All of that, these aren't even like, some of these aren't. Escondido is not a Democratic stronghold. Okay, we have a Democratic majority there, but it is not considered a Democratic stronghold. Look how blue it is. Poway is not a Democratic stronghold by any measure. It is blue. Coronado. Remember, I told you those three cities that are Republican leaning. Coronado, Poway, and was it Santee? I think it is. I can't see Santee right here, but Poway and Coronado have a bunch of blue there. That means Democrats are turning out, and they're turning out early. We also know that, which is a little bit interesting, look at this young voter here, 18 to 34. They are voting at a higher number than every other generation. That is unprecedented. It's never happened before. This is not something that happens. I didn't even see that until just now. As the president of the California Democrats, who's in that 18 to 34 room range, that you know, I mean, well, actually, they're registered to vote, but they're becoming a bigger part of the voter role. They're not like the ones turning in their early ballots. I was wrong. But what it shows is that they are now growing in terms of the percentage of the vote, and then they should show out. So I was wrong. They actually it wasn't quite that good. I read it completely wrong. The turnout is on the right side. What their numbers are, what we're seeing is because of motor voter, there are more 18 to 34 people group, but what we're seeing is the subgroup of 65 plus are turning in their ballots more. The 50-64 is turning their ballots more. And again, the older millennials and lower Gen Z are Gen X are sort of struggling, and then the 18 to 34s are actually just behind them. We will see that grow as we move through it. There are a lot of efforts. I was almost excited for a minute. I was like, that's unprecedented. It is, because it didn't happen. So, but you can see that people are turning in their ballots, and they're turning their ballots sooner. What this also means is, for those of you who have done the election night watch parties or whatever, normally what happens is all the older and Republican precincts come in first, and then the Democratic precinct comes in first, so comes in afterwards. So for example, Scott Peters in 2014, he was down about 2,500 votes on election night, at the end of election night. However, as 4 days later, all those Democratic votes came in, and he was able to surpass them. It'll be the opposite this time. Democrat voters will be in the early returns, because they're turning in their mail ballots, and so it will balance out that whole. It should balance out the whole. It starts out Republican and then becomes more Democratic. It should be fairly more even this time, and so that's San Diego County. And that's basically most of my presentation. If you would like to connect with the Democratic Party, you can, for example, if you want to get to mobilize the vote here in San Diego, you can go to our Mobilize, www.mobilize.us at San Diego Dems. If you'd like to see the voter guide, as I showed you earlier, again, I'll give you these links, stdemocrats.org/vote, also at stvoter.org, that is us. For those of you who are Democrats who haven't given to the party yet, we are we have 765,000 people to reach out to still, of which I can tell you 181,000 people have already voted. That means we still have 600,000 people to contact, and that costs a lot of money. So you can definitely, if you feel so inclined, can go to stdemocrats.org/donate. And then I don't know where I am on time, but if there are questions.
Wow, thank you. Will, you filled our heads with so much important information. I'm going to need some time to absorb all of this, because this is exactly what we wanted from you, and you delivered in space. Thank you so much. We're going to have to study this, and I'm glad we recorded this, because we're going to make sure all of our viewers can get to hit play and pause and go back and look at all that stuff. But I do have a question for you. I'm going to turn it over to Dari Rezvani, who assures me he's not related to the Rezvani automaker. And I think he's only saying that because he doesn't want to get hit up with Persian discounts. I don't know. But Dari is in Fresno. He's a community activist. He's running for a Democratic office over there. And he's going to ask you maybe a 1 minute or shorter question. And if you could maybe spend a minute to answer it so we can move on. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Well, you're the president of California Young Democrats, correct?
Correct.
So first of all, I just want to say thank you for endorsing my campaign down here in the Central Valley. The next thing I just wanted to ask you, because I think a lot of the people on this call want to know some of the feedback, because I know just having conversations here in the community, people are anxious. I know in 2016, everyone thought that they'd wake up and it would be a different situation, right? And so I think ignoring the polls and kind of, you know, I'm sure you guys are doing phone banking in swing states, stuff like that. What is some of the feedback that you're hearing?
Well, it depends. I mean, it sort of changes depending on what race you're calling into. In terms of the national stuff, Democrats are very motivated. I think there aren't many undecideds left in the national election, but what we are seeing is a large spectrum of undecideds at the local race, and there's a reason for that. While the national races get all the attention, and so they're in the news, they have all the ads, they have all the money to do that, those local races normally get their information through the parties, frankly, and through their campaigns. And since we're in a COVID era, what we're seeing is a large number of undecideds on a bunch of local races. And what this leads is to sort of a level of uncertainty about like what will happen on the election night, because voters have less information to deal with to make their decision than they normally do. Now, what I would suggest is there is a lot of like sort of anxious feelings in terms of some of these local races that are still very important, but Democratic voters are very motivated. And we're seeing that in the mail ballot returns. Normally it is Republican, and there's another point I would like to make. Normally it's Republicans who are really big on mail ballot voting. So if there's a Democratic advantage, that is an unusual thing. But in addition to that, what I think is happening is on the national level, the Republican attempt to suppress the mail ballot vote, it's all fraud, don't trust the post office, is leading to them holding on to their ballots. And as a result, they will face a decrease in turnout, because now, since there's COVID-19 and we have less polling precinct locations, a Republican voter is going to go to a polling place that they've been voting at for decades, and that polling place is going to be closed because they haven't been paying attention, and their party is not doing a good job of like educating their voters on where to vote and how to vote. That's why we've seen a change in Trump's narrative from don't trust the post office, this mail ballot thing is a fraud, to get out and turn in your mail ballot because he's going to lose. They're also doing this on the census. One of the problems that we saw with the census is that, that we feared, is that California will lose representation because we didn't grow as a populace as much as some of the red states. But here is what we're seeing. If you look at the national turnout, California and Democrats in Democratic states are doing a really good job of having better returns on census forms than red states, because they did not do a good job of doing that. And as a result, even though everyone's turnout will probably be less, we will have more people who have turned out our forms because we as a party have done a better job of doing both voter registration, voter education, assuring the interest in the confidence of the mail ballot system, and because we're telling our voters to also register for the census.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you, Dari. This was fantastic. We're going to review this and make sure all of the important information you shared gets to our viewers. And if you do want to send me your presentation, we'll make sure we post it on our website at BAIAD.org. The BAIAD website will have all of this information with it.
I just dropped the link in your chat. So
thank you.
That's the presentation.
Well, we'll see you on the campaign trail, and good luck to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now So now we'll go to the video that we're going to run up for Congresswoman Anna Eshoo. Sina, are we good to go? All right.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. This is Anna Eshoo, and I'm so happy to join you today. It's an honor to be with you. I'm delighted to be with the Bay Area Iranian-American Democrats and San Diego. So thank you for asking me to just say a few words to you today. But first, my thanks. My thanks for what you do, what you care about, your willingness to work so hard on it through your association with the organizations at both parties. Now, you submitted some questions, and so I will summarize. There were several questions that dealt with, first of all, the tragic wildfires in our state. In my congressional district, we were hit hard in a part of my district with 77,000 evacuees, over 1,000 homes lost. And so these wildfires have really upended so many people's lives. And the question is, what can we do about it? First of all, I believe that we need a new plan for federal lands. At least 45% of the wildfires were federal lands that burned in California. And so a new plan would include, obviously, the resources for it. What the firefighters told me when I spent time with them was that we were grossly not only underfunded, but that we needed a whole new set of firefighters at the federal level. And that's very, very important. Our local police departments are very accustomed to putting out fires of structures. But these are wildfires, and it really demands a different set of capabilities. So that's number one. Number two, I think that the climate and the change of the climate, in fact, I would call these climate fires. I call them climate fires because the debris that underwent many years of drought, when the lightning struck, that was fuel, and that fuel exploded. And so to broaden this out, it's more than obvious to me that the Congress of the United States has to have a plan relative to the change in our climate, whether it's taxing carbon emissions. We have to reduce fossil fuel usage in our country. And I believe that not only together with the legislation that the House has already put together to address climate change, but that with a new administration that believes in the science and the scientists that have instructed us that the United States of America is prepared to take this on. Can we get real police reform? Yes, we can, and the House of Representatives has already passed that bill. It prohibits police from using chokeholds or otherwise applying pressure to the throat. Work to end racial, religious, and discriminatory profiling. Eliminate qualified immunity for police officers. Require allegations of police misconduct to be investigated by independent prosecutors. It also provides grants to the states to carry out so many of these measures because there are costs to them. We sent that legislation to the Senate. Mitch McConnell has it in his bottom drawer. A new Congress, a new Senate, a new president, we will see these become the law of the land. And what are my thoughts about the presidential race? I'm highly encouraged. I'm nervous, I think, as all of you are, but I'm highly encouraged for the following reasons. We have seen just in this week, beginning with October the 12th, I think, 15 million people are already participating in early voting in states in the country. They're willing to stand in line for 4 hours, 7 hours, 11 hours. So this has to be consistent. We know that Trump supporters will definitely go out to vote. You can put your money on that. We have to make sure, we all have to make sure, and I'm doing everything humanly possible in playing a role in that, that we will have turnout across the country. And when we do, our country will take a new direction, a better direction, with respect and regard for everyone, that we are all God's children, that we can indeed beat this pandemic, and that the federal government will lead the entire nation in the effort, and that we will return to manners, respect for one another. We say that we are the United States of America. This is our opportunity to unite the country and truly be the United States of America, e pluribus unum, out of the many, one. So thank you to each one of you for your activism, for your willingness to work hard to make sure that we can restore our democracy, make it stronger than ever. I can't thank you enough for that. I wish I was with you in person, but this is what we have to do during this pandemic. Thank you for allowing me to say a few words to you, and bless all of you for your deep passions and for loving America. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman Eshoo. It's great to have her voice. And although obviously there's a lot of us here in California, San Diego, Fresno, San Jose, Bay Area, and Congresswoman from Northern California, this is really a national message. It's a national conversation. The examples we provided earlier in this program of San Diego, you can, whether it's the Democratic Party of, any other city, America, all of those resources are available to you anywhere. So especially voter suppression issues and some of the campaign financing links that were provided, you can check those things nationally. So next, we're going to go to our next speaker, Yasmin Radjy from Planned Parenthood Action Fund. She's got a decade of experience in electoral and community organizing, and she currently serves as the National Political Director at Planned Parenthood. So not only are we so pleased to see an Iranian-American in such an important organization, we're honored to have her here today to lend her voice to what we're trying to do. Thank you so much, Yasmin. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Sharyar, and it's so great to see a number of familiar faces on the screen with us today. I'm especially honored to be following Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, who's my hometown Congresswoman. I grew up in Palo Alto, and grew up voting for her and all the times that I was back west, but I've been a nomad ever since. So hello to everybody from Washington, DC. I'm especially excited to be here with BAIAD because back when I lived in the Bay Area, I would go to many of your events, including one of my favorite BAIAD events, the 2012 Iranian-Americans for Obama phone banking event, which was amazing. And still to this day, one of my favorite phone banking stories that I've ever had was phone banking, sitting right next to Sina, who had all his piles of call sheets for us. And I remember calling through, and my Farsi is very cocktail party appropriate, but not siyasat. I just my vocabulary runs out real quick. So I was very nervous for this phone banking, and I was switching between English and Farsi. And I called someone, let's call him Hamid, was on my call list, who was 30 years old, male, somewhere in Virginia or something like that. And I called and I said, could I please speak with Hamid? It was an older woman on the line. She goes, Bale, Yasmin ki? It's like, hi, Yasmin Radjy. منو نمیشناسین ببخشید I'm calling from Iranian-Americans for Obama, like I'm calling from a call list. حمید تعریف نکرده. And I'm like, oh my God, if we had the matchmaking, if we had the determination from our matchmaking in our civic engagement, we would be running every election in this country. And so she's like, میتونم شماره تلفنتون رو بنویسم. I'm like, it's okay, I'll call back Hamid another time. So anyway, to this day, one of my favorite phone banking experiences. So thank you to BAIAD for giving me that amazing opportunity. And for all the work of being a consistent voice in activating all of us, especially back in the Bay Area, but getting to reconnect remotely with you all from Washington is such a treat and a pleasure. And glad to see the group is expanding every time with more and more faces. So thank you for that. I'm also really excited that there's just so many candidates on the line here. Seeing, Dari is someone who I got to interview as part of my role as the National Political Director of Planned Parenthood Action Fund, and seeing so many state and local candidates here, Siamak, Kimi, others. It's just so exciting that just even in 2012, the kinds of conversations that we were having aspirationally there was that we would be gathered on calls like this with not just a candidate and a person talking about running for office, but so many members of our community at the helm of campaigns as candidates, but also running campaigns and running amazing movement organizations. We're in a moment as a community where the head of one of the biggest progressive organizations in the country, MoveOn.org, is half Iranian, Rana Epting. It's just these looking all around us and seeing that our community is, we still have work to do, but every year we're getting more and more engaged, and not just in, within our own community, but also just broadly within the progressive movement, which makes me so proud and so excited to be with all of you. So I come here wearing a number of hats, here as a BAIAD supporter, long time. As Shahryar said in the introduction, my day job is as the National Political Director of Planned Parenthood Action Fund. I'm also really proud to serve on the board of NIAC Action, the C4 political arm of the National Iranian-American Council, with some folks on the line, Ladan Manteghi, who's our board chair, and her sister, who's one of the leaders of BAIAD. So anyway, just really excited to be with all of you. And I'll be sort of talking about Planned Parenthood's work on the healthcare side, the political work that I'm involved with in my day job, just for sort of general context and information, and then also broadly sort of where I'm excited about where our community is leading over the course of this election cycle. So this election, I know everyone is here on a Sunday rather than doing whatever else we can do during quarantine, because we know how much is at stake in this election. And we know that every single issue that impacts Iranian Americans is on the line, whether it's the issues that impact us directly as a community, like the Muslim ban, like all the travel restrictions that our families have experienced for so long, like what Trump has done to fight the Iran deal completely unnecessarily. And I think he said, the day after the election, he's going to be able to negotiate an entirely new deal, which we all know is just the same kind of lies that we've been hearing day after day. So all the issues that are impacting us as a community are on the line, but also the existential issues that impact our whole country, including Iranian Americans, are so incredibly important right now, and reproductive rights being one of them. Democracy reform, which is, I saw someone in the chat earlier asking about campaign finance law and things like that. I mean, these are the kinds of issues that, as our community is getting more and more active, with more and more folks running for office, hopefully, knock on wood, we'll be sending our first member of Congress, first Iranian American to Congress with Sima Lajavarian in just 16 days. But what's exciting is that our folks are running for the issues that impact us, but also all the issues that impact all Americans and all of our communities. And I think we're all threading the needle of, we've got to show up, as a community, but we've also got to show up to fix our broken democracy, because Iranian Americans are not going to have representation in the ways that we ought to and the ways that we could when we have a system where, Will talked about all the great ways that the California Democratic Party is doing so much to make sure that voting is safe and easy. that is the gold standard that so many other states should be lifted or should be reaching. And that is just not the case in so many of the places that many of the folks on the line live. And we've just got to shift that in 2020. So up and down the ballot, from the most local office that Will talked about all the way up to the presidency, everything is on the line. And what gets me, sort of wakes me up every morning, is knowing that it's not just the anxiety of just how much is on the line, but that really, winning in a big way is within reach, and that the only way that we can do that is through the kind of grassroots activism and engagement that many of the folks on the line have been tip of the spear of for a long time, but also that our community, I think, is uniquely equipped for. Even if we didn't have the opportunities to do grassroots organizing for those who grew up in Iran, because it was a very different political climate, here our folks have learned how to be the best of the best in those skills, and we're only growing and expanding in that. So when I talk about all those things that are on the line, including democracy reform, including reproductive rights, I would be remiss to not talk about the Supreme Court because of the news that we've had in these past few weeks. And so something that keeps me up at night and wakes me up in the morning is just how much is at stake both for our democracy, and then obviously, given how passionate I am about reproductive rights, how much is at stake for the future of women's equality in this country, which hinges on our ability to control our own bodies. And that is something that all Americans should be concerned with. It's also something that most Americans are actually completely aligned on, contrary to the ways that we sort of hear the conversation, flow in news media. Today, 77% of Americans support Roe v. Wade. 77%. Republicans, Democrats, and independents support it. And we're looking at a Supreme Court where it is going to be tilting towards a hard right, extreme anti-reproductive rights potential majority with Amy Coney Barrett. So that is something that's of great, great concern, particularly in a moment where it's not just that 77% of Americans supporting something that the Supreme Court is potentially moving far away from, with the blessing and the leadership, or the lack of leadership, frankly, of Republicans in the Senate and of the president. But also we're in a moment where what's happened, Will talked a lot about the power of the states. Most of the candidates who are on the line here are running for state office, thank goodness, because we need so much more power in the states. And something that my colleagues at Planned Parenthood have been experiencing for years all across the country is that the attacks of Trumpism and the attacks of the far right that we are now talking about as sort of like, even in my middle school cousins are completely literate and articulate on now, are the kinds of things that we needed to really wake up to 10 years ago. And so many of our friends in legislatures have been focused on. And what's happened at the Supreme Court is Mitch McConnell really having a long-term game plan. And so we have so much on the line to make sure that our states are catching up to where Americans are in terms of their support and their values. If 77% of Americans support Roe v. Wade, our legislatures should reflect that. And instead, a lot of our legislatures have some of the most hard right policies and hard right legislators, because people don't know who they're voting for. They don't know how to access the kinds of information about who folks are and what they stand for. And the result of that is we have legislatures in this country that are doing things like passing 6-week abortion bans. 6 weeks is before most women know that they're pregnant. And those are things that, my brilliant colleagues on the Planned Parenthood litigation team, Planned Parenthood Federation of America litigation team, are fighting in the courts left and right and leaving it all out on the field. But when you have these kinds of extreme pieces of legislation, and you have courts where the majority of federal judges all across this country are extremely conservative. Mitch McConnell has said his greatest source of pride in being in the U.S. Senate is that he has filled every single vacancy of federal judges around the country. I think it's over 200 seats that he's filled. When you have that, and then you're talking about Amy Coney Barrett, who is horrible and who should not be confirmed, although it doesn't look like my hopes and dreams are going to be achieved in the next few days. But when you're looking at that, that is the symptom of a much deeper cancer that we're seeing all across the country. And so this election, I think, where I feel hopeful in the midst of just how much work there is ahead, is that we can win the presidency. We will win the presidency. We can win the US Senate. And what's exciting about winning the US Senate is that means that we can have a majority to actually move policy. I mean, we've had so many great policy ideas, and then they make it through the House, and including DC statehood. I'm so excited to support DC statehood, and it made it through the House, which is great. Got to make it through the Senate. We also have the opportunity to have the most progressive House that we've ever had, and have amazing candidates, including our first Iranian-American there. And then the same thing in state legislatures. All of that is within reach, but it's going to be a tough fight these next 16 days. And so it makes me really, really happy that the Iranian-American community is more engaged and more active at every level than ever before, because first of all, we cannot lose. There's just way too much on the line. And also because once we win, and we're 16 days out from the election, and then there are all sorts of very tough scenarios that could emerge if the vote is close. We've got to win by a really big margin, because Trump's got to step down, and we've got to not go into a million lawsuits right after the election is won. But after that, the interesting work that we're ready for as a community of scientists, and the highest rate of PhDs, I think, of any immigrant community, or maybe that's just me being Iranian and exaggerating, saying that we have all the things. But then is our opportunity to turn those big electoral wins into huge policy wins on the issues that specifically impact Iranian Americans, and on the issues that each of us as Iranian Americans cares about, just as citizens of the communities that we're in. I know for me, beyond reproductive rights, which I work on every single day, I'm really ready to work on fixing our immigration system that impacts me as an Iranian American, but also growing up in Palo Alto, I saw the big differences of how my family experienced immigration policy versus how, the communities in East Palo Alto of undocumented folks were experiencing things in a much more brutal way. So we have a lot of work to do. We have a great opportunity to win all of the things. And I hope that the folks on the line have built their plans, not just to vote. Hopefully folks have already voted by mail and convinced their friends to do the same, but also have built a plan for how to use these next 16 days to make sure to have the biggest impact possible. Whether that's getting involved in a local election, whether that's phone banking for the Biden-Harris campaign, whether that's donating and bundling dollars for Sima Radjy to help elect one of our own to Congress, whether it's a mix of those things, but figuring out a plan. I worked with my dad recently on his plan. He's never raised any money for any candidates before, and he's newly retired. And so we had an opportunity with some extra time on our hands, and none of us can really leave the house anymore, and built a plan to learn how to fundraise for the first time. And he's been really, really enjoying it. So I hope that folks are doing that. I know that there's many resources that will be shared here. I know that the team at NIAC Action that Ladan and I are involved with, we are leading the Beshkan the Vote effort to lead the largest Iranian-American voter engagement effort ever, which is incredibly exciting, with a real focus on targeted swing states. I know Iranian-Americans for Biden that Ardavan is a key leader in, and many others are also doing some amazing work. Did an event with Valerie Jarrett this past Friday, and are doing all sorts of phone banking and other things. So excited to work with all of you. Thank you for all you do, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Yasmin. That was fantastic. Real quickly, before I go to Dari for a quick question that he'll have for you, your conversation made me think of two things. First, my 12-year-old son asked me about abortion, and he asked me, are you pro-choice or pro-life? And that conversation, I wasn't really prepared for that conversation. It wasn't the talk, but it was something obviously we have to get smart on. And then you also think, your energy and your experience made me think, we're going about this all wrong in getting more young people to be involved in activism. We should have an Iranian-American democratic dating service of some sort, because I think what your experience is what everybody goes through every single day. So you just gave us a brilliant marketing idea. Thank you.
I love it.
We may name it the Yasmin, Iranian-American democratic dating service. Click here. So I'll shut up. Dari, you have more important questions to ask our guests.
I love it.
I just wanted to make two comments. One, obviously, I'm like one of your biggest fans, so I really appreciate you stepping on the call to be with us. So I really appreciate that. Just another comment. it seems like Iranian women are just running circles around the men. So,
Yes.
you know, if we
No
could,
offense, but it's true.
to all the men listening to this, if we could kind of step our game up, because this is kind of embarrassing. No, lastly, you know, if you could just very quickly kind of speak to building a bench, because you did talk about state legislature, but I think kind of connecting all of it so that, you know, we're not swinging for the fences, you know, running for Congress or Senate for the first time, and we can actually kind of understand the structural getting people into power.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an important question. And I would say I would broaden the building the bench just from running for office to also, you know, there are so many places where critical political decision making is made outside of elected office where we also need to build the bench. So what I would say is, you know, I think I remember when I first, a brief personal history lesson was my way that I met many of you was I was organizing with the National Iranian-American Council in the Bay Area from about 2000, I'm gonna mess up my years, I think from like 2012 to 2015. So in the lead up to the Iran deal, and was spending a lot of time talking to many of you about, you know, how could our community get more active and what are the barriers and so on. And I remember the narrative that I heard the most consistently when I would sit down with folks one-on-one was, you know, I know that you've organized in Latino communities. I know you've organized with Black folks. I know you've organized with white folks. Our community is really special. And in our specialness, we have specific problems that you are young and optimistic and you have all the hope in the world. But as soon as you start organizing our community, you will see we can't get active. We can't come together. We can't agree on anything, whatever. The list goes on. And I was like, well, I don't think that's true, but you know, blah, blah, blah. And I was ready to just be deeply disappointed with our community. And on the contrary, we've got problems just like every other community has problems. And we have infighting just like every other community does. But I think that the kind of key difference, and to your question on building the bench, the key difference is we haven't invested in the same way as some of our communities, such as the Indian-American community, such as, you know, our Latinx brothers and sisters in the training and of the sort of civic skills development. And in fairness to us, we're a newer American community. You know, my parents and uncles and aunts and everyone have always been political in the sense that they read every foreign policy publication under the sun and read The Economist and read the New York Times and talk about all the things. But in terms of like actually, like our grandparents weren't labor leaders in the civil rights or civil rights leaders because we, you know, our families were in Iran where it's been a series of complicated anti-democratic governments for a long time. And, you know, with now being the worst of all. But I say that because I think that just through building the skills, we can do anything that we want, but we've got to invest in not just sort of individually taking our own journeys, but you know, I'll use the example of my dad. My dad did not think that he had the capacity, the skills, or the personality to fundraise. Spent an hour training him, walked him through making his first calls, and he's raised twice as much as he thought that he would. It's not that complex, but I think building the bench takes that time up front to sort of overcome our mental hurdles to be like, we can do anything that we try. And I think that we've got to be intentional about that on the candidate side for sure. We've got to be running folks. I'm excited about not just the folks here, but Yasmin Ansari in Phoenix. You know, we've got Atlanta. Georgia has more Iranian-American candidates, I think, than California, which is embarrassing as a Californian. But, you know, so there, but also to train organizers when they're right out of college. My first job out of college was on the Obama campaign. Train us early so that we're, you know, we're able to run organizations like Rana is currently years later. And I think folks are rightly focused on young Iranian Americans, which I think is so, so important. But folks like my dad really care and really could be engaged. And sometimes we're like, well, old dog, no new tricks. But, you know, we can all learn. And I think the lifelong learning is building the bench, not just of people who will professionally do this, but also of, you know, the folks who are running great local civic groups like BAIAD, and also folks who are leading the fundraising efforts for campaigns or leading the door knocking efforts for campaigns. And anyway, so that's my, I think training is my simpler version of that answer that I hope that we will all invest in.
Fantastic, Yasmin. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for doing what you're doing. We're going to be in touch and hopefully celebrate after November 3rd. Thank you.
Yes, can't wait.
All right, so we're going to go to our next speaker, and I'm just going to do a little time check. It's about 2:11 Pacific time. we're already running a little bit behind. So I'm going to ask the next few speakers to see if you can maybe get close to 10 minutes or so, because we do seem to have some questions and answer time afterwards. So if I could respectfully ask Sudi Farokhnia, our next speaker, to start with the 10-minute goal, and hopefully the other speakers will follow. But I'm going to introduce Sudi Farokhnia, an Iranian-American activist. Oh my God, the list of interests and accomplishments is so long and immense, from women's rights, gender equality, the environmental crisis, foreign policy, and for Sanders, Delegate. The list is just enormous. But you seem to exemplify exactly who we want on this conversation, and who can energize our base in getting involved. Thank you, Sudi, for doing what you're doing, and take it away.
Thank you, Durud ba hamegi. Thanks for the invite. It's a pleasure to be here. I was asked to, talk on behalf of being someone who was very strong in the Bernie campaign, and the more progressive side of the House, and why is it that I'm still energized about this election, and why I emphasize for about, I think, the entire month of September, I called and emailed and talked to every Bernie delegate that I knew in order to calm their pain and come to consensus that supporting Biden is important and it's vital. And there were two things that happened in the middle of that. One was that Bernie made a statement that this is not an election between Democrats and Republicans. This is an election between Trump and democracy must win. And also AOC, God bless her, had a PSA done, and then she, put it simply at, this is a matter of survival. And so what I saw was turning points among many of the Bernie delegates, where they kind of toned down their attacks on Biden. And I told everyone, and I still say, that perfection is a myth. And I'm a perfectionist myself. So, I fall into that trap all the time. And, we know Biden hasn't always been on the right side of the history, so many different ways. He has even recently made comments that were not exactly, appropriate. You're not Black enough if you're not voting for me. That, that would be an example. And so, of course, people pick it up. But we're talking about where in Farsi we say you're comparing the cup to the elephant, filofenjun, so yeah, Biden, no one is trying to say that Biden is necessarily, the ideal candidate. In some ways, maybe he is. And that's where I've come to. The country is so divided. And, the social media has really poisoned so many people, and there's so much information that people have just an election fatigue, and just so tired of hearing combating information, that we do need someone who has been known for collaboration, for someone who has worked across the aisle, and who has brought people together, who is, I always say that the goal does not justify the means, and I still truly believe that. But there is one place where the goal of getting rid of the fascism that Trump is presenting definitely, justifies that we, even the most progressive of people who like me do not believe that we have true democracy when we have only a two-party system, still try to work within the system and make sure that we can survive. We can hopefully skip having a civil war that Trump has no problem burning the country down, along the way, just so he would not accept defeat. So I have, Bernie has done a really good job. For a while, I thought that Bernie was doing more campaigning for Biden than he was doing himself. And, he has pointed out really good areas. These are the wins that we had. The student debt issue was addressed. The free college, providing 2 years of community college to all students. Expanding the Medicare to include, dental and vision, and reducing the eligibility years by 55. Definitely, there's a, day and night difference between Trump and Biden when it comes to environmental justice. One is a science denier, the other one has a little bit of a, staying positive. He thinks we have until 2035 to take care of some of the things, he's dragging his feet on doing some of this. So at least he's doing something, while the other one is doing nothing, and then, of course, his promise of, reversing the xenophobic guidelines like the Muslim ban, and that he has stepped up really, as a Catholic, as a practicing Catholic, to come and say that, I will make Roe versus Wade the law of the land, and we wouldn't have to worry about Supreme Court having to make decisions on that. Those are really strong. Of course, I find it troubling that we are at the 100-year anniversary of women's, the year that we've been celebrating the centennial, and then we would have to worry about if women are going to be able to have access to birth control, or many other things. And it's also very much about marriage equality. I mean, I think every creep is just coming out of the woodwork, in the past 4 years. And now we have, another SCOTUS like Thomas that he never should have gotten there. And that would be something that it's a negative legacy of Biden, actually. He coming after, he feels emboldened right now to come after the marriage equality, thinking that he's going to have enough people. And then, the other idea is that, what sort of a system of governing we really have, because, I had to look up and read so much, try to kind of embrace this comeback of many of these Republicans that they would say, this is not a democracy, we're a republic. And what does that all mean, and how is that any different? And at the end of the day, the Constitution starts with the words, we the people. That is the doctrine of democracy. And it is about representation. And, as Yasmin mentioned, I recently sat there and thought about which one is more troubling to me right now. Is it the appointee of the nominee for the SCOTUS, or Trump? And I realize I'm actually more concerned about this appointee than Trump is. Maybe I've become kind of numb to fighting with Trump for 4 years, and this one is just such a fresh wound. But this goes deep because I've been a women's rights activist for over 20 years, and this is running against everything. We're just going backwards, and I always try to do a lot of reading of the opposition, even though it boils my blood at times and gets my blood pressure so high. But there's nothing a good stiff glass of scotch can't handle. But I do read these because I want to know, what their view is. And as a women's rights activist, when I hear that, they're right. We should not be questioning the fact that she has 7 children. We should not should we be questioning that she is a Catholic. I do question the fact that we only have 51 million Catholic in the United States, and we have already 5 Catholics sitting on the bench, with her becoming the 6th one. How is that representative? And I enjoy that. I love living in California. I mean, one of the very proud moments of California was just the recent appointment of the SCOTUS in California, where now we have 4 women, 4 men, 1 openly gay man who happens to be also Black. I mean, we are trying to be representative. We are trying to address the intersectionality of our identity as a nation, as a population of one state. And unfortunately, the US Supreme Court is not representative. And the other side of it is that Amy Barrett herself in 2016 said that it would not be appropriate, even though it was 10 months before the election, that, well, 9 months before the election and 10 months before the year end, that it would not be appropriate to replace Scalia because it will create an imbalance in the court. And how is it that replacing a very, progressive SCOTUS with a very regressive SCOTUS is not throwing off the court? So, activism is important. Voting is important. How, as a very progressive person, I have come to, be the voice of reason, perhaps, with some of my, colleagues who have been fighting along. And, the good thing is I can say that most people have agreed that if they want to promote Green Party, or if they want to really lift People's Party and make it a third option and all that, it's all going to have to happen after January, because God forbid, if Trump was to be reelected, we would be under street. I mean, for God's sake, we just had another Women's March. We always did that in January. We just had the second one in October yesterday. So we will be marching, and we will be still demanding accountability from Biden, but that does not mean that we should stop fascism that Trump represent, and that we can be complacent like 2016, where so many people, Obama failed us, really. He's failed us in 2016. They were so sure that Hillary would win that they left 140 judge seats open for Trump to come and just run over, and so it's good to look back and determine, see where we went wrong. And what I do every day in my life is, how I earn living, is risk management. And in risk management, you're always looking for the root cause so you can prevent things from happening again. And if there's any benefit or silver lining of these past 4 years of horrific experience with Trump, is that there are so many loopholes in the system of governing of United States. There is so much room for people to take advantage of, and we really need to build this country. The past 240 years had slavery and sexism and everything else. The most recent 4 years has had xenophobia, genophobia, and everything else. And hopefully we can all come together and, build a system of governing that, I'm just afraid we're going to have another Ahmadinejad moment where we're going to be all screaming, "Where's my vote?" So please vote.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much, Sudi. That was fantastic. I feel energized and a little smarter, I think, just hearing you talk. I think there's so much that went on in the past few election cycles that I think some of us ignored or took for granted, as you pointed out. And here we are living the consequences of those elections, right?
Exactly.
And I think another thing you alluded to really quickly, I think as an immigrant, like all of us, the promise of this country, it's past. A lot of people say, "Make America great again." And there's a lot of difficult things this country has left behind. The promise of America is its future.
Yes.
That's what makes this country great, is that anyone that comes here, as Ronald Reagan said, becomes an American, and they can work on contributing to this future. So I think you have shown that by your example. Thank you so much. Please stay tuned. And I want to go quickly to Dr. Ardavan Mobasheri, another Iranian-American activist with Iranian-Americans for Joe Biden. And I'm sorry, I'm going to rush the last few speakers because we wanted to kind of finish by 3. So instead of 15 minutes, I'm going to respectfully ask 5 or 7 minutes so we can keep on track. Thank you so much. Dr. Mobasheri, I'll go to you.
And thank you very much, Shahryar. Thank you very much, everyone. And I will respectfully respect that the 5 to 7 minutes, or I'll even keep it to 5. So given that short time frame, I do want to mention a few things that everyone has mentioned. Sudi mentioned, Yasmin mentioned, and Mariam and others have mentioned. But I think just following up on Sudi said, how important it is to put aside some of our differences during the primaries and voting, and how important Bernie Sanders supporters are to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the success of the Democratic Party. I mean, you cannot underemphasize how important they are. Just to give you a perspective, Hillary Clinton lost the US presidential elections in 2016, theoretically, and my apologies for bringing out some of my statistical background here, but by 74,000 votes in the state of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. If we were to just simply look at some of the surveys post-elections, whether it was Hillary supporters that were comfortable with the polls, or whether it was Bernie Sanders supporters who didn't go to the polls, roughly about 195,000 Democrats could have voted in those 3 states. And today, we would not have known who Neil Gorsuch is, we would not have known who Brett Kavanaugh is, and we would not have known who Amy Coney Barrett is. It's that important. And despite the fact that there's 132 or 133 million Americans who are going to be voting, it could really come down to, again, 75, 80,000 votes in those 3 states, or we're all old enough to remember 2000 in Florida, over about 300 votes. It literally can come down that close. The one thing I do want to mention, and I think Maya mentioned this, and a lot of people mentioned this, I'm a big believer in the polls as a statistician. So when I do look at polls and I do see Joe Biden up 8, 9, 10, in some cases double digits, I have to tell you, they make me feel very good in one sense, because I believe in the accuracy of those polls. But one thing that we have to understand is that those polls represent, although they are a very good sample, 1,500 people really do make a good size sample for 130 million people. But that is on the assumption that what the 1,500 people who reply to really can then be extrapolated to 130 million people. So if 1,500 people results in a Joe Biden up 8 or up 9, that's a real result. But that would mean that the 130 million people that are supposed to vote actually do come out and vote. So my perspective on the polling is beautiful numbers, but let's make sure they turn out to be right. The only way they can be turned out to be right is if we have that active participation that really needs for us to be able to extrapolate those numbers. And then at the end of the day, and I appreciate this invite from California, beautiful state, powerful state, wealthy state, important state, but it's a solid blue state. Right. It's I grew up in Pennsylvania, which was solid blue at the time. Then I moved to New York. Then I moved to New Jersey, and now I'm Virginia. I can, for some reason or other, I've avoided living in purple states to actually really see what elections are. But there really is a battleground out there in Arizona, in Florida, in North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. It really could come down to very close. We could really have a Florida repeat. And when you actually look at how many Iranian Americans live in these swing states, the importance of, and we all have nephews and cousins and brothers and sisters and maybe parents who live in some of these states. It really could come down to small margins in these states. It's really important if we can. The group that I created, we're trying to emphasize, trying to get people in these swing states out there and vote. There's a lot of them. Believe it or not, there's as many as 7,000 Iranian Americans who can vote, meaning they're above the age of 18 in Arizona alone. 9,000 in Georgia, which was a solid red state, and now looks like it can be purple state, if not in this case, a blue state. North Carolina, Pennsylvania, upwards of 12,000 Iranian Americans. So there is the power there for Iranian Americans to actually play that marginal role in getting Joe Biden and Kamala Harris elected, and not having to look back at the mistakes and the unfortunate gap that we are living through between 2016 and 2020, which, by the way, aren't just going to be able to be unwound with executive orders. Some will require legislation. Some will require pragmatism, which I think we're going to get plenty from a Biden-Harris administration. But it's going to take more than 2, 3, possibly more than 2 elections to be able to unwind the damage that we've seen in the last 4 years. as Yasmin mentioned, and as Sudi mentioned, as far as the courts are concerned, that could take longer. Nobody wants to talk about. No, we don't want to get into the point of packing the courts or what exactly it means to pack the courts. But that could take that could take a while for us to be able to recover these backward marches that we've seen over the last 3.5 to 4 years. Let me stop here. I want to be respectful and mindful of my time. I could have spoken for quite a bit, but let me stop here.
Thank you. Oh my God, the speakers, they're all world class as far as I'm concerned, and it feels like I'm back in college. I started taking notes. This is a lesson program really for Iranian-American activism from different parts of the country, different backgrounds, different experiences coming together with one common mission. So thank you, Dr. Mobasheri. We're gonna hopefully keep you online for a little bit, few minutes longer as we go to our next speaker, Siamak Khadjenoury from the Utah House of Representatives. Are you on, Siamak?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Take it away.
Okay, great. Shahryar Khan, it's an honor. To be amongst this absolutely distinguished panel, I can't even tell you how this feels. It's something I cannot say very often where I live, to be amongst distinguished Iranian-American activists. So with that said, running as a Democrat in the most conservative state, in the most conservative district in that state, is crazy enough, not to mention running as an Iranian-American in that race. I'm running for Utah House of Representatives, which is District 49, covering cities of Sandy and Cottonwood Heights, about 10 minutes outside of Salt Lake City. We're at the foothills of about 4 world-class ski resorts: Snowbird, Alta, Brighton, and Solitude. Sorry about the shameless plug. It's a heavily conservative area, which has elected a Democrat only once before and for 1 term only. Our district is about 57 registered Republicans, and the rest is split between Dems and Independents. That means, in order for us to win, we have to convince every Independent and peel off at least 10% of Republicans. To date, we have canvassed and talked to about 10,000 people in the past 5 months, lit dropped, phone banked, and text banked about 25,000 registered voters several times over. My opponent is a senior vice president of the state's largest bank, which is pretty flush with cash, but we have a small army of grassroots volunteers. Our internal polling right now suggests that we're running neck and neck, which should not be the case at this point. Our message of accountability and transparency seems to be resonating with the voters. My background is I'm a psychiatric hospital CEO, and now I run mental health and addiction clinics. I advocate for better access to healthcare, and especially mental health and addictions treatment for our neighbors and people of Utah. My platform includes accountability in representation, healthcare accessibility, and prioritizing education and improving our air quality. I'm proud to have been endorsed by most major national and local labor unions, the Sierra Club, the Equal Rights Amendment, Planned Parenthood of Utah, U.S. Term Limits, Salt Lake County District Attorney, Salt Lake County Sheriffs, just to name a few. You know, we always talk about the importance of down-ballot voting. I think in our case, we believe we're actually helping the head of the ticket. If and when elected, I'll be the first Iranian-American and Middle Easterner ever elected to the Utah House in the state of Utah. Our campaign has excited many independents, which has resulted in seeing Biden-Harris signs popping up all along the county. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to respect Shahryar Khan's instructions. If anyone would like to get more information, please visit our website, siamakforutah.com. Siamak, of course, it's SIAMAK for utah.com. And our social media, the same, Siamak for Utah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Siamak. And please send us those links. I want to make sure they're going to be on BAIAD's website right under this link, hopefully this evening, and we'll make sure the message gets out there. Again, I'm always surprised, you know, to see Iranians flourishing in every corner of this union, and I'm especially, if I may inject a personal note to your background in mental health, a lot of Iranian Americans, I think, well, mental health is just not a topic we talk about in our community. That may be something that deserves its own conversation separately, and certainly someone that I think can be supported, you know, people that have this kind of background. I don't know, personally, I trust more than a banker, but that's just me.
Thank you.
Please stay tuned.
Thank you, Shahriar.
Thank you. We're going to go to our next speaker. I think we have Kimi Abernathy from the State Senate, Tennessee, District 20. Kimi? Do we have Kimi? I saw her. Maybe you're on mute.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Here.
I appreciate so much the opportunity to be here with this group. Like Siamak, I am in Tennessee, or not like him, I'm in Tennessee, but I'm in an area that is not flush with Iranian-Americans. and I grew up here. I was born and raised in Tennessee. My family's from Tabriz, but I was born and raised here. And I grew up in a state that was actually, this may surprise many of you, blue. It was a solidly blue state. You may know Al Gore Jr. and Sr. were elected from Tennessee. Estes Kefauver, who was one of the great Democratic leaders of our country, was from here. So we always had a strong blue tradition, and I grew up in that. I also, my father was active as a student in the '53 revolution. My parents were academicians, and so were on college campuses. And so we grew up, my siblings and I grew up with a tendency toward the political activism. And I'm thankful for that. And it made a difference in the way I viewed the world. And also, I think very much having grown up in a state where being an Iranian-American, where there were probably initially no other Iranian-American families in my state. I can remember when people started moving here, most of whom were our family members, but then other people started coming, and it was a significant change, and it changed the way I viewed Tennessee and how I looked at the world. Certainly as a child, we would go back to Iran, but it was only in those summers that I interacted with Iranians and Iranian-Americans. So I learned about being involved politically from my parents and from my Iranian family, but also watched how, as my Iranian family started seeking to come here, the barriers that were thrown up for them and the prejudices that they faced. And I remember the prejudices that we faced growing up here and the things that we dealt with being so unusual. I am probably the oldest person on this call. I'm the grandmother of the group. And so I've watched that progression of Tennessee. Oh, I am. I promise you I am. I've watched
the wisest.
I'm sorry?
You are the wisest.
Otherwise, I am the wisest. I've watched that progression, not just of Tennessee and my family, but of the United States. That progression of the growing Iranian-American community and how we have gone from being coming here, huddling and finding a way to make new lives to becoming part of the political system and part of the scene. Though I will say what Yasmin was told, I have experienced in that it is sometimes hard to organize the older Iranians. They aren't quite ready sometimes to get right out there on the campaign trail, but they do care deeply. And so we are political by nature. We care about the issues of the world, and I think that's important. As a little background, I'll tell you, I am an educator. I'm an independent educational consultant. I've worked with students in public and private schools. I've done lots of pro bono work with young people. I'm a school counselor, and now, as I said, I work privately as a counselor with young people. And again, Siamak, I've worked extensively in the substance abuse arena. And those are areas that were very important to me. I lost my primary to a more moderate Democrat in August, and that was a hard loss. But it wasn't the beginning or the end of my involvement in politics. I've spent my life, in fact, the first campaign I ever worked on was McGovern's. So that'll tell you a little bit about I was young, but I worked on that. And I see our group, our young people stepping up and building that bench that we were talking about and caring as they become more engaged as Americans. And I think the issues that affect Iranian Americans are also American issues. Even the things I talked about that I experienced as a young woman, the prejudices and the problems I experienced, those affect everyone. None of the issues that affect Iranians are ours alone. And that's how we engage with the broader community. Because we have to help everyone understand immigration issues are all Americans' issues. International policy, all Americans' issues. Peace in the world, all Americans' issues. Disproportionate effect of COVID on minority populations, that is an issue that affects all Americans. And so we have to help people understand that while we're working from within the Iranian-American community, our issues are all Americans' issues. They are not just our issues. And we will advocate for things that particularly affect us. But again, they're not just our issues. And some of the things I've done in my career, working in my passion, not my professional career, have always been focused on the social justice things. And I think my social justice work has probably been more effective, obviously, than my political career. But I've worked with an organization. I was on the leadership team for an organization called the Equity Alliance. And it was an organization that started about 4 years ago. And our full focus was on helping communities of color become civically engaged. It is our full focus. Communities of color becoming civically engaged, building that voting habit, getting people registered, and helping former felons regain their voting rights. We were so effective in that because we registered over 90,000 previously unregistered people in Tennessee for the 2018 election, that our extremely conservative legislature passed a law to make registering people and having any errors on the ballots a felony. Now, the courts have struck down this law, but they came after us specifically because we were focusing on communities of color. Now I'm the president of an organization called Core 54, and our focus is outreach to communities who are voting against their own best interests. Tennessee is the #1 state for per capita hospital closures. We've seen more hospital closures. We have not accepted the Affordable Care Act in Tennessee. So we have more hospital closures than any other state in the union. And so we see our people are voting for people who refuse to accept the Affordable Care Act. They're voting against their own interests. They're desperate for healthcare in these communities and all the second, third, and fourth order consequences of not having it. You don't have a hospital. Industry doesn't come to your community. Industry doesn't come to your community. You don't have a tax base, or people don't get jobs. People don't get jobs, you don't have a tax base. You don't have a tax base, you don't have good schools. You don't have good schools, people start moving away. So we see those second, third, fourth order consequences. So we're doing outreach into these communities, and we're not talking about being a Republican or a Democrat. We're talking specifically about the issues, because you and I know that on the issues, we're right. We are right. People have to have health care. People have to have access to clean water and air. People have to have access to good education. And so these are the issues we're working on with Core 54, and it's to help people who are voting against their own best interests, their children's best interest. And so that's one of the organizations I work with. And I run an organization. My daughter, I have 5 children, 4 sons and a daughter. My daughter's adopted from Azerbaijan. She's from Baku, and she was actually the first child ever adopted internationally from Baku. And so we work very heavily with the baby houses there, and we have worked to help put in early intervention programs, childhood early intervention programs, and we support the programs in the baby houses. But I run an organization that's an international organization that supports these programs. And that is also not just for those children, though that's very important. We're trying to support families so they don't give their children up for adoption. But it's also because the efforts that Americans make in communities where people are suffering builds goodwill as well. And so everything we do in a social justice realm, whether it's running for office or not, is building a platform for all of us. And it's building an opportunity to make the world a better place. And I think that is what is bringing more and more people to our side. And finally, I want to say that Yasmin was also right, or I think Daria was speaking to this, building that bench is so important. So I don't know if I'm going to run again. I'm very passionate. I've worked on many campaigns. I continue to work on campaigns, but we have to bring our young people along, and building that bench is so important. The way I got involved in running for office was I did a program called Emerge. And some of you may know about Emerge. It was founded by the people who ran Kamala Harris's first campaign. And it's a Democratic Party program for women candidates. It's a training program. And it would be a great model for us to consider for our young people. Or the men don't have a model like this, but these women do. And it would be a great model for our candidates. It's a 6-month program. It's an intensive training program. And I'll tell you, I could never have raised the $200,000 I raised to run for state office without it. I could never have gotten, you know, the 20,000 votes I got without it. I had a fabulous network of volunteers and team that came because I learned the nature of a campaign. And so my suggestion would be that if we're looking at building a bench, we look at instituting that kind of program or working with something like Emerge. And it is a fabulous program. And on one happy note, I want to let you know that without any support like this at all, the head of the Democratic caucus, which is admittedly just 5 senators, but the head of the Democratic caucus in Tennessee's Senate is an Iranian-American and a good friend of mine. So I'm very proud of that in Tennessee. And on that note, I'll finish. But thank you for the opportunity to be with you all.
Thank you. I think
What
it was
is his name, Kimi? Sorry.
It's the woman.
Oh, what is her name?
Ramesh Akbari.
Ramesh Akbari?
Yes. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you so much. I think you said you were ending with a happy note, but as far as that, it was all happy note. Your personal life experience, which is so relevant, your passion for what you're doing. Again, another representation of Iranian-Americans taking root in whatever communities we're dropped into, whether it's because we got a job or we went to school there, we got married there. We build roots, and at some point, you know, it's been some over 40, 50 years when some of us have been here. You say, hey, look, every other ethnic community is advancing, they're getting organized, they're educating themselves, they're getting into public office, and here we are still, in our humble view, I think we're still in our infancy. We still don't have all of the mature, whether it's a long bench or various folks in elected public office, but we're getting close. In fact, Sudi just shared some 20 different council members, which we're going to have on our people running for council office, city council office all around the country, men, women, also the 2 folks running for the House of Representatives. We're going to share that on the BAIAD website. That's all good news as far as I'm concerned, that sooner or later, one or two will hit, and then that will become the model. And then we will be telling our kids and grandkids, you know, back then, you know, here we were, this is the best we could do, but here we are in office all over the country. So thank you for what you're doing, Kimi.
And Kimi, I have a comment for you. Since you're the grandmother, Susan will be happy that I moved to the great grandmother section.
Why is this?
Close, close here.
Wisdom keeps growing on our bench. Thank you. So I'm going to go
the old folks bench.
So I'm going to go to Ladan Manteghi. Again, her list of accomplishments and work experience professional, senior advisor to Georgetown University Business for Impact Initiative in public service in various positions for many, many years, U.S. government agencies, working for Bill Clinton, and currently serving as the NIAC chair, National Iranian-American Council. So Ladan, for some, I want to say, I'm not going to say final thoughts because Dari is going to follow you, and then I'm going to go to my partner, Mariam Ghazvini, but some perspective on where you are and how you see things from our community.
Absolutely. The first thing I see is that actually we may be holding back some people from their scotch, and I definitely don't want to interfere with that. But those who are wise recognize that we probably can't see them and may have their glasses in their hands. So I would hope that people take advantage of the opportunity here. Having said that, you know, thank you for inviting me to do this. I have to just take 30 seconds to do this because if I don't, I would be remiss. I have to recognize my sister. Susan Safakish is a warrior. She is a warrior. She is my shiro, and she activates like no one I have seen. And I don't say this because she's my sister. I say this because I was afraid of her throughout my entire childhood. And finally, around my 20s or close to 30s, you know, I started to not be as afraid of her, but still to this day, if she asks me to do something, I do what she asks me to. Actually, it's not an ask, it's usually just a tell. So with that, you all are beyond fortunate, I have to say, to have her as one of the leaders in the state. So Susan June, love you, Aziz. You know, I have to go to something, seeing the list that Sudi put up, seeing everybody who's on here speaking and participating, we have come a long way. We have come as a community a long way. I say this because, you know, in the 80s and 90s, I was a lone Democrat. In 1996, I was working for the Clinton-Gore campaign, the re-election campaign. And to be very honest, I was very disconnected from our community. And, you know, it was because people would shoo me out a lot of times. And just because I was politically active. I was invited in to a Charshamba Suri. And actually it was in Charshamba Suri. It was Sudabeh, excuse me. I was invited and specifically asked to do voter registration. Non-political, non-partisan, but to do that. I showed up, set up, and people who were organizing that event came over and asked me to leave. Then they told me to leave after I explained to them that they had invited me to come and do this event and to register Iranians. That was about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. How far we have come. So I am grateful to see where we are now, and I'm here to say that this is just the beginning. I don't think we're in our infancy, Shahriar John. I actually think we're toddlers and we're growing fast. We are growing fast. We have more Dems than I have ever seen. We have candidates more than I have ever seen. We have political appointees from the local level all the way to the national level. We have presidential campaign staff, multiple. There were 2 political appointees in the Clinton-Gore administration who were Iranian-American at the time. Now, we had multiple during the Obama administration, and we have multiple who are on the Biden campaign. We've got fundraisers, donors, and other elected officials who are sitting in office right now. There's more to build. I'm wearing my t-shirt. You may not be able to see this, but I'll stand up. It was being dried. It says, November is coming. October is here. This t-shirt is wrong. October is here. We have to activate, and it is vital that we do so. As a wrap up, this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to ask for a call to action. I'm going to ask us to activate. So, as Yasmin said, have a voting plan. Have a voting plan not just for yourselves, but for your parents, for your siblings, for your partners, for your neighbors. Go vote early if you can vote in person. Make sure your ballot boxes are official, because we hear about the funky business that's going on in California, all the way here in DC. But please go and vote. Have that plan, activate as early as you possibly can. Volunteer. I am actually heading to Florida on Tuesday. Ardavan said we're likely to have a Florida repeat. You know what? We are. In 2000, I worked for Gore as he was running for president. In 2016, I was in Florida in Broward County because I didn't want to see the same thing happen to Hillary as happened to Gore. And we won Broward County, but we lost Pinellas County. This time I'm going to Pinellas County on Tuesday, and I'm going to do voter protection because it's necessary. Volunteer, activate. I will put in the feed a link to protectthevote.net where you can volunteer for California or elsewhere, and Will indicated earlier other opportunities for protecting the vote in California specifically, but I know there are others from other states on. I will provide that link. We have attorneys amongst our ranks, amongst our community. We need attorneys in this endeavor. I will also put up the link here. I'll put up Protect the Vote in the YouTube chat. I will also put up the link to where attorneys can sign up to volunteer as well. There are people who are trying to keep our community and other communities from voting. If you go to Protect the Vote, you will see links to what your rights are. Know your rights if you're going to the polls. Know your rights as you're going to drop off. November 3rd is just the beginning. November 4th is just the beginning. We have to unify as a community come November 4th. We have to unify now, but we have to unify even more because we need, as Iranian Americans, a strong voice. And we need to be in the halls of influence. Trust me, the campaigns, they know our money, but they need to know our strength, our power, and our influence. And with that, we have to invest in our community. We have to invest in the organizations like BAIAD. We have to invest in NIAC. We have to invest in PAYA. We have to invest in whatever evolves out of all the groups who are supporting Iranian Americans for Biden and other organizations. We have to invest in our community so that we can flourish. And with that, thank you all. Let's go. Let's do this. Let's bring this home because we matter. We matter.
Thank you, Ladan. That was amazing. Again, you taught us something about family. I wish I had a sister like yours, but I was honored to work with her. And you're right, nothing got done until she pushed a button, and suddenly it got done. So I benefited from my very short interaction with your sister, and it's been very, very rewarding. And you're seeing the results of it, which is really this production that we're now wrapping up. So I'm gonna go to Dari for some final thoughts, and Mariam, at the end, but we're at 3 o'clock. We want to keep it short, respect everyone's time. But Dari, you know, how do you see things? How did we do? What did we miss? What can we do better next time?
I think this was terrific. I think that the goal of this was to educate folks. I think we did that. I think we had a wide range of viewpoints. I personally am a Sudi Democrat, where I'm a big Bernie supporter, and you know, I'm swallowing my pride on this one. I realize that the things that we're fighting for, we don't get to fight for if Trump gets reelected, right? And so I think that for the greater good, everyone needs to understand what exactly we're fighting for. No one is happy with this. The way presidential elections work out, less than 20% of the entire country actually in a primary chose that president. But what you can choose, and the things that have drastically more impact on your everyday life, is your school board, is your city council. Those are the things that make tangible impacts on your everyday life. And on top of it, when you have, excuse my language, but when you have an asshole like this in the White House, having a strong local government protects you from the federal government. It's one of the things that I don't know how we haven't organized down ballot before in the way that we need to. But I mean, these are the seats, right? And then from that, then endorsement power comes, right? Then you can start making those connections. Then you work your way up. And look, I'm someone who threw my hat in the ring and ran for Congress after quitting my job because I was just pissed at how everything was going. One of the things that we don't talk about is every time you run for office, it's startup costs. If we had a connected community that continued organizing, that initial startup cost is reduced. So already you're at an advantage when you're running for office. And so this is all, look, Chikara movement is, for the Indian American community, is exactly what we need to start modeling our relationships after, because the amount of political clout that they have in California, I'll tell you what, if they want something done, it will be done. And that is what we need to get to. So I just want to say I'm impressed with everyone. And you know, look, Ladan, I've been endorsed by NIAC Action. You guys have supported me when no one else would, so I appreciate you. You know, Suzanne, Miriam, Sharyar, like everything you guys are doing is what we need. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for participating and bringing some energy to this group of Scotch drinkers. So I'm going to go to Sudi for some resources to share, because we missed some things, and it'd be really good to have it. Sudi?
Yes, so sorry to interrupt, but Ladan Jun mentioned about the T-shirt, and I'm like, oh my God, how did I miss this? I too did put a T-shirt on. If you guys can see, this is the map of Iran with the 5 fingers, and the idea is 5 votes. And this is coming from PersianVote.org, which has everything you want to know across the country in both Farsi and English. So it's a great resource for you to share with others. There is a hotline available that you can go in there and ask any question. I'm sure you guys can answer, but if it's a resource that I hope that you share with others. And this idea of this 5 finger means that just make a plan of helping 5 other people vote. If you have to give them right, or if you have help them, fill up their ballots or answer their questions or whatever it is, but make a list of 5 people in your mind and reach out to those 5 people and say, are you okay? If they're all set and they voted, great. If not, then you would be able to make sure that they actually cast their vote.
Excellent, excellent. I want one of those.
Yes, I know. So the Damun Maksudi is another person you would want to talk about perhaps in some other events, but he's the one who gave out these T-shirts to us. So
beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Sudi.
Sure.
So I'm going to go to my partner in crime, Mariam Ghazvini. Mariam, John, we did it. We survived. Any final thoughts for the group before we sign off?
No, I just want to mention, like every single one of the speakers have mentioned, participate, do something, because when we actually go talk to any of the politicians, any people in power, they usually ask, what is your voting bloc? And that's when we all go silent, because we really don't have a voting bloc. Now, with all these states participating and representing, hopefully we can get together, we can start those clubs that has empowered us to go forward. in your local area and connected to your local Democratic Party. And hopefully at that point, we can say we have so many clubs all over the United States and their members add up to 500,000 people, because we have them, by the way. I think there's over 1 million or 2 million by now Iranian Americans living in the United States, but they're all hiding because they're scared of everything. So I tell them they already know about you. Hiding doesn't make any difference.
Thank you, Madam Jam. You're right. I think as Ladan corrected me, we are not in our infancy. We're definitely toddlers. We're reaching high for the stars. We're standing up in our community, and whatever we start, obviously we're doing for the next generation in our community. So thank you to all our speakers, to our moderators, to the Bay Area Iranian-American Democrats, the San Diego Iranian-American Democrats, and everyone that participated and watched on YouTube. Stay tuned, stay engaged, make a voting plan, get it done on November 3rd, and then let's keep this conversation going after November 3rd, because the job is just beginning. This is just a warm-up for what we have to commit to by investing in our community. Thank you so much. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. خداحافظ.
Best of luck, Siamak.
خیلی ممنون. مرسی. خداحافظ سودی خانم.
خداحافظ همگی.